I am here today to show you another one of my favorite stitches for adding vertical texture, and that is the detached bullion knot. Now, last video I showed you how to do my 5 favorite stitches, and the regular bullion knot was one of those. But the detached bullion is something that just sort of floats around here. And these are some little ones. Here's a larger stack of them. So see, I could just make a little cluster of them, and they're very cute. You could make really long ones, and you could still attach them down like you would a traditional bullion, but this gives you another opportunity for some vertical texture. So let me show you how simple this is. There's just a couple things you got to keep in mind when you're doing them, but it's really easy, I promise. Okay, so here's what you're going to do. You're going to need a needle, and you know what? You can use any size. If you have a traditional bullion needle, you can use that. Today I am using something out of the Handy Hands tatting needles, and they come in a collection with multiple sizes. I want one that's got a large opening here at the top because I'm going to be using my fingering yarn, which is one of my favorites to do, and I'm going to use it doubled. So I have my fingering yarn, and I'm going to thread my needle. Now, like the drizzles and the cast-on stitches, it's helpful if you have a pincushion or something that, or pillow or something that you can stab your needle into, because your needle is going to be standing upright. But look at this cheap and easy thing you can do. Grab some packaging material, and your needle is going to stick in there just fine. And I love to use this. And you don't need a hoop for this one. I mean, you could use it in a hoop, but you don't need to. All right, let me put a knot in here. And I'm going to bring my needle up near the ones that I already have. And then I'm going to take my yarn out, just like I would on a drizzle. And I'm going to put my needle down right close to where I did the other one. Now, you can just wrap it like this, but here's what's going to happen. If you do not lock your stitches, when you pull your needle through, it's going to slide right off. So what I've discovered is that if you lock it at the top and at the bottom of your bullion wraps, it's going to work a lot better. So I'm going to cast on one here, and I'm going to cast on one here. And that's going to lock those stitches at the bottom and keep them from falling through. Now I'm going to wrap like I would a bullion. And this can be as short or as long as you want. Now the other thing you want to keep in mind is you want to keep the thickness of your fiber about the same thickness as your needle. And the reason for that is if I had a really fat needle like this, and I was using something like embroidery floss, or even on this sometimes, it's going to be too thin and it's going to pull right through even with your locked knots at each end. All right, so well, they're not knots, they're cast on stitches, but you get what I mean. I'm kind of locking it in. All right, and I'm just going to slide them down and just kind of running them around to make sure they're snug, but you don't want to get them too tight because you got to be able to pull it through. Okay, now remember, when you pull it through, it's going to pull it snugger. So if I want them to be about the same height, you've got to make sure you allow for how tight you're going to pull that through. I decided that's as tall as I want it, so I'm going to do another cast on stitch here. And again, this is just something that I figured out for me. It sort of helps lock everything in. Rethread your needle. Use a needle threader if you need to. Sometimes I do that. And then you're going to pull it through. Now, if you have trouble pulling something through, you can grab pliers. I'm always afraid I'm going to hit myself in the eye with the pliers because it's come close a couple times. So I use these silicone thimbles. I can protect myself from the pointy end and hold on to it as I work the loops over the top. Okay, and then I'm going to pull that all the way through, and I've got those lock stitches at the top, and boom, look at that. How cool is that? Isn't that a neat little stitch? All right, I'll do one more. I'm going to pull my needle up somewhere and take it out of the needle. And then I'm going to put that needle back down into this foam I'm going to cast on one stitch and cast on another stitch. And then I'm just going to loop, loop, loop. I just really like making clusters of these, just like you would make clusters of drizzles or the cast on stitches. I just think it's really interesting to give that vertical texture, and especially when they're in a group like that. And if they're even longer, you know, they can kind of look like vines out of control, or you could put some cast on stitches in the middle and have them coming in. You can put a bead at the end. Let's see how long I can get this one. Looks pretty good. I'm going to do a cast on stitch at the top. Eventually I'm going to do one. There's one. And there's one, and I'm going to rethread my needle. And I'm going to pull it through. Just kind of work it off the end of the needle. And again, you know, if you muff it up and it pulls like halfway through and you don't like the looks of it, just lay it down and do some French knots over the top of it to hide it. It's just going to add some more visual interest. Don't stress about it. Okay, I've got that there. I'm just going to pull it the rest of the way. Those are the detached bullion stitches. There you have it. Isn't that a fun little stitch? I just love these detached bullion stitches, and I use them all the time. I hope you have a good time playing with it, and let me know down in the comments if you have any questions.